In this video, I'm going to talk about Medicare Part C, Medicare Advantage. So in a prior video, I talked about Medicare Parts A and B, which are basically the traditional Medicare kind of situation, and then the Part D supplemental coverage for pharmacy benefits and things like that. So under Medicare Part C with the Medicare Advantage, basically this is kind of a different approach. So really kind of what happens is for under Part C, basically what you have is there's sort of a choice that people have, and I've addressed this in a prior video, which is you can do either Medicare Parts A and B, or you could do Part C, the Medicare Advantage. And with either route, really, you have the option of doing the Medicare Part D, the supplemental prescription coverage as well. So, so what's going on with Medicare Part C? So basically, with Medicare Part C, what a person is doing is when they elect to do Medicare Part C, the Medicare Advantage, they basically give away or give up the Part A and Part B coverage under traditional Medicare, and they basically get coverage through on an insurance plan through an insurance company. Now, with that, those have to be eligible plans to be considered to be Medicare Advantage plans. So in order for it to qualify as Medicare Part C, it has to be an eligible plan that satisfies various government requirements and regulations, et cetera. So it basically functions probably more like an insurance plan would in some respects. Um, but with that in mind, this is as a result of that, it's going to typically eliminate the need for Medigap coverage, because the idea behind the Medigap coverage is to fill in the gaps in Parts A and Part B, but we're doing Part C in this case. We're doing something through a separate insurance company. So generally speaking, the Medigap coverage is not really relevant in this context. Now, for the Part C, kind of what's actually sort of happening here is the individual who's doing Part C still actually pays Part B premiums. So you're still kind of using parts of the Medicare kind of traditional Medicare kind of approach, but we're doing this under more of a typical insurance company sort of a umbrella, if that makes sense. And so there's some different features. And so the plans look different, the features are different, and so forth. There's the possibility there may be a maximum out-of-pocket cap. That's not true for Medicare Part A or Part B. But there's the possibility that if you sign up for Medicare Advantage, there could be a maximum out-of-pocket cap for the Advantage plan. And so some people find that to be attractive. But as noted, you basically do have to pay, you do have the premiums for the Part B coverage, so you're still kind of paying premiums for that. And you are paying separate premiums for this Part C coverage. So there's kind of no free lunch here. So kind of what's happening is under traditional Medicare, the Part A coverage, if you have sufficient covered quarters and all that, then basically you don't typically have premiums you're paying for the Part A coverage typically. There are some exceptions to that, but basically, generally speaking, if you have a sufficient number of quarters of Medicare covered employment and things like that, then generally you don't have a separate premium associated with Part A. So in this case, we're adding on premiums because we're now going to have a premium we're paying for the Part C plan. We are still paying the Part B premiums, so that part should be pretty comparable. And as it relates to that, basically, with the Medicare Part C plan as a whole, they have to have at least the same sort of benefits as Parts A and B. But anything beyond that is subject to change. So there's a certain baseline of the kinds of things of coverages that have to be addressed. But the actual benefit structure themselves can be quite a bit different. And so this could lead to some surprises. So you might have a situation in which, basically, if you were getting some things that were covered under Medicare, and then you switch to a traditional Medicare, and then you switch to a Medicare Advantage, the Medicare Advantage, there are certain things that it has to have sort of the base coverage and things like that, but the structure of co-pays and deductibles and things like that can be different. And so as a result of that, this could result in different amounts for what you're having to pay sort of out of pocket and things like that for certain kinds of routine treatments and things. I mean, it can vary a bit. It depends on the nuances of the policy, and what the policy covers depends on the policy specifically. So one of the advantages of Medicare Part A and Part B, under the traditional Medicare, is basically what they cover is essentially established by government regulation. So under the law, it's established by regulation. And so generally speaking, there aren't really big drastic changes that occur to that. If you're looking at a Medicare Advantage plan, since it's running through an insurance company, there are certain things that they have to have in order to qualify as an eligible plan. But there are things that can be changed from year to year. And so the actual structure of benefits is subject to more fluctuation. And so that's something to be mindful of that. Also, it's worth noting that if you elect to do the Medicare Advantage route, then in that case, you may miss the open enrollment period for a Medigap policy. So remember, for Medigap policy, there's a 6-month open enrollment period, basically during that period where you're initially enrolling in Medicare. So if you did the Medicare Advantage and you do that for, a year or two, well, you've missed the open enrollment period now because this is past that initial window in which you could sign up for Medicare. So now you don't have that open enrollment period for Medigap policies. So that's not really going to be an option, or at least probably not a great option, because now once you've missed that open enrollment period, they can consider your health situation when determining whether or not to extend coverage to you if you wanted to later go back and try to get a Medigap policy. So this is potentially an irreversible, well, maybe not quite irreversible, is a little bit strong, but it has some impacts that may be irreversible down the road if you choose a Medicare Advantage plan. And again, it's more subject to the changing nature of some of the plans offered through these private insurance companies. They do have to qualify, but there are some nuances there that are perhaps a bit less stable than the regulatory-based approach of coverages under Medicare Part A and Part B for traditional Medicare. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea about kind of what's going on with Medicare Advantage. You're basically swapping traditional Medicare for Medicare Advantage, additional premiums and things like that you're going to have, and different benefit structure and things like that, and the potential for more variability in the benefit structure and what's covered, what's not, and so forth. So hopefully this helps. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.